I'm checking in from Los Angeles this morning and looking forward to seeing where everyone is. Awesome. Finland, the first check-in, very cool. Always really love seeing our international community. San Diego, hi Paige, welcome. France, California, Romania, England, New Jersey, Mexico.
Shonda.
Yeah. Hi, Shonda. Morning. Vancouver, Maryland. Awesome. Phoenix, Sweden. Oh, hi, Josephine.
Hey. Hey.
Oh, yeah, Danny, we have a nice warm audience for you.
I wasn't nervous before, right now. Yeah. No, I'm good.
Joy says, hi, Uncle Danny.
I got a car full of them heading back to Sacramento, and they're listening, or they're seeing.
Awesome.
Love you guys. Miss you already.
And I think with that, we can get started. I know that we're also live on Facebook. So thank you everyone so much for being here. Again, my name is Blair. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Prison Yoga Project. And we are here with our founder, James Fox, and a former participant at San Quentin, Danny Plunkett. So everyone give them a nice warm welcome. Thank you both for being here and making the time. And as always, we're going to start with a centering opportunity, and Danny is going to lead us in that today. So whenever you're ready, Danny, you can take the wheel.
Okay. So wherever you are, if you can kind of sit up, feeling your feet supported, maybe your hands in your lap, back straight if you can do that. Yeah. And if you can, close your eyes, unless you're driving. We're going to try to settle our mind, settle our body. Just breathe, relax. Slow inhales. Maybe pausing on the inhale. And the slow exhale. Maybe pausing on the exhale. Just go at your own pace. Feel yourself supported. Maybe we can bring our attention to the top of our head. Notice whatever sensations you're feeling. Bring our attention down to our forehead. Slow breaths. Bring our attention into our eyes. Maybe feel our eyelids relax. Let's bring our attention down to our jaw. Feel the muscles in our face relax. If you feel any tension, just breathe into it. Inhale and exhale. Maybe bring our attention into our necks. Whatever tension we may feel, we welcome. Breathe in, breathe out. and to bring our attention into our shoulders. We welcome all sensations. Breathe in, breathe out. Bring our attention into our elbows. Bring our attention into our hands. We feel the hands being supported. We feel supported by the chair or our seat. Bring our attention down to our feet. And we feel supported. Or you can bring slow inhale, pause, slow exhale, pause. One more slow inhale, pause, slow exhale, pause. And just return to normal, relaxed breathing. We find that spiritual center. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks for that. Well, as we were talking before we got on, it's just such a joy to have the time to spend with you and have a conversation. And I think I'd like to start by you were mentioning you just had 4 generations from your family at your house over the weekend, and tell us about that.
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. It was a lot of people in a small house, but it was so much love. And my sister and her daughter, Brittany, my sister Joy, and my niece Brittany and her husband Dave, and then their 3 small children, Josiah at 8, Emmett 5, and the little princess Abigail 2. And it's just been great. So, and it's been determined that I am the greatest great uncle of all time. So,
all right. All right. Well, then you got something to live up to for sure. And Danny, where are you? Where are you right now?
Right now, I am in the home I grew up in Long Beach, California. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you also just returned from a trip to North Carolina, and wondered if you'd say a little bit about that, the connection to North Carolina and how your trip went.
Yeah, that was great. I got to go spend a week with my mom's brother, my Uncle John, and his family, and my Aunt Diana, and my cousins JC and Missy, and then Missy's family, her husband Peter, and then their two young children. So it's been really great. I'd never been to the East Coast. Get to go play in the Atlantic Ocean, and I'm a water baby for sure. And I go out there and spend all day in the water. So, but it was really great. Got to visit the Kitty Hawk Museum Yeah, so it's been great. It's really been great.
Great.
Yeah.
And no problems with the travel, huh? No problems with the, you flew out of Long Beach or LA?
Yeah, LA. So you
Uh-huh.
can't get a straight flight from Long Beach. I love Long Beach Airport, but the LA airport is, it's an experience, right? And but yeah, I did good on the flight, and I don't know if it's from those long bus rides in prison, but also just being able to just sit and center, and so
Yeah. So, since you brought it up, anybody who's gone into California prisons and worked with prisoners, you brought up bus ride. And I remember Arnulfo Garcia, God bless him, God rest his soul, wrote that great little book about the bus ride. But you said, taking the flight, you were accustomed to long flights, and maybe a lot has to do with bus rides. So maybe mention something about the bus rides and what that means.
yeah. So bus rides, and the different reasons for why you're getting on a bus and going to another prison, and that can affect the journey. But it's going from one place to another place. It's new. You don't know what's there usually. So there's some fear, anxiety. Plus, one thing about being institutionalized, you get me, and I think a lot of others, we kind of get really settled into where we live, and become very comfortable, and then you have to uproot that, and it's we become attached to our physical possessions in a lot of ways. I think I guess maybe everybody does, but I think that's kind of unique in prison. And when you have to transfer from one place to another, you don't get to take a lot of the stuff that you've accumulated with you, and so that's kind of an aspect of it. And you get stripped down to 6 cubic feet and of material possessions, and you have to go box that up, and then you go to get on the bus and get shackled in, and it's not a comfortable experience, but you get a jumpsuit to put on, and for tall guys, those are always a little more uncomfortable. But and get on a bus, and then there's a guy, a guard with a shotgun in the back of the bus, and it's that, with the gun being present, that kind of brings a different atmosphere to it too, right? And it could be a few hours. The longest one I had was 16 hours, driving from Folsom to Calipatria State Prison, when that one was opening up in the early 90s. And yeah, so just having to get up and use the bathroom, and you get a box lunch, and that's it, and you sit there, and as long as it's going to take, oh, they might stop for Carl's Jr. for themselves, but
Yeah.
so, but yeah, it's
And oftentimes it's not just a bus ride from point A to point B. There's stops in between, right?
yeah,
Where you go to other prisons and pick up other people. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes you get stuck on a layover. So you going from one place to another, you might stop at a prison and get off and stay there for a week or a month or a day.
Yeah.
And yeah, and again, no physical possessions, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Keeping it real.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's always an experience, and not always pleasant, but yeah.
So I was delighted to recently see you, kind of a surprise meeting.
Yeah.
Your buddy Red had texted me that you guys were going to be over in Stinson Beach, which is right nearby me.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys didn't even realize I was going to show up, because Red and I kept it quiet. And it was just wonderful to see you. And because that's the first time I've seen you since you were released.
Yeah.
and they have some time to spend together and talk. And so when was your release date, Danny?
I paroled October 26th of 2018. Yeah, 2000.
Uh-huh.
Well, I've been out over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And how many years in total did you serve?
29 years, 4 months. Yeah.
29 years, 4 months.
I was 19 when I committed the crime and was arrested, and I was 49 years old when I walked out. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know this is a deep question, but how's your transition been? I mean, when you look back to when you got out to now and the things that you've been through, how's that been?
It has been a lot of ups, but a lot of downs. Yeah, difficult times. For me, for my experience, so I want to be careful how I say this. So I walked out. My father was there. My mother had had a stroke. Her health had been bad for several years, and she was in the hospital. And my buddy was there though with the phone and FaceTiming with moms. I got to see her too, and it was just great. And then I got to go see some people up by San Quentin, and some of the volunteers and the guys who were in with me, and it was just incredible. It was incredible. Got home, came back down to Long Beach, and they discharged mom, and we all went home. That was a Friday, and well, the next day I was straight at the beach. My brother picked, and just beautiful. It was just great. As I said, mom's health wasn't good, but but we were together as a family. Really outside for the first time. Almost 3 decades, and so it was beautiful. I went to report to the parole agent that following Monday, and I was scheduled to go to a transitional program for 6 months, which all lifers are required to do in East LA, and I'd be able to come home every day and just when I went to the parole agent and she started processing me in, and she found a request from one of my victims that I not live within 35 miles of that victim or within the same county, which was LA County. And so it took a little while. I was trying to find some place as close to my folks as I could. And they wound up sending me to a transitional program in San Bernardino County. So I was about an hour from anybody I knew. And when I got there, they said I couldn't even step foot in LA County. So I couldn't even visit home. So that was difficult, not just for me, but for my family. I really had one priority getting out, and that was to try to be here for my parents, especially my mom. And, they supported me for 30 years. And, they've been so incredible for me, to me. And so it was very, very difficult. And that's not everybody's experience. That was mine. And I had to deal with that and get out there. I didn't really have a lot of support. My agent, I could barely get him on the phone. Most times I couldn't, and so yeah, I had to learn how to do things a lot myself. And honestly, the two things that helped the most was what I have gotten from meditation and yoga and the work that I've done there. And I have to say Narcotics Anonymous as well has been big for me. But also Colette Carroll with California Reentry. She Institute CRI, and she was a big help too. And she was always there for me on the phone if I needed it. Because it's getting out. It's just you got I mean, really when you got nothing but a prison ID, and if you've been prepared like I was, I had a copy of my birth certificate, and I was fortunate. I had to go get the Social Security card. You have to go do all those things, and the place I was at didn't have any lifers, so which made it a little bit harder because there was no one that knew what I was going through, and it was mostly guys from county jail or right out of rehab, and So I didn't have a lot of support that way. So it was tough. And where I was living, the environment that I was living in, was, there was a lot of opportunities to go down the wrong path. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to say that I had no temptations or anything like that. But I did okay. I did pretty well. I got everything I was supposed to do. I went to my classes like I was supposed to do. And I took the advice of some and said, you just got to get out and go, walk around, explore, and be in nature. And so I got to do a lot of that the first few months. Got me a yoga mat right off the bat, went to Big Five and got me a yoga mat. And I would do a yoga. And the guys at the house respected me, I think mostly because of the time that I did carries something with it. And but they would see me out there by the gym, and nobody would join me though. So but I did have a pretty good practice there in the beginning. And then my parents, my dad came out and would bring a car out, and we'd drive around, and I had to learn how to drive all over again. And I got my license and I started working, and that's when my practice fell off. Yeah. So after 4 months though, they determined that I was allowed to visit home. So then I could come home, but then I was working, but I was able to get back and spend more time with mom and dad. In those first 4 months, they would meet me in Orange County, and we would spend time out there and go eat or something. But so it was good. So we did have some time together. Yeah, and then when you start working, that's just that's kind of it's where things change, right? The rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Exactly. It becomes the priority. You gotta cover yourself. So, and oftentimes people ask us, well, do you have programs on the outside? And at one point in time, we tried to start a program in Oakland for guys who were being released.
Mhm.
And we tried to find a decent time to do that when we chose Sunday morning, because we had polled the guys and they said, well, the only time we really have is Sunday morning. But then it turned out nobody really could come because Sunday morning came around and they had the opportunity to spend time with friends or family. And so you've got work, you've got a place to live, you've got your connection with family. Yoga classes don't rise to the top of the list. So it really does come back to, and of course, this is such a focus of ours, it really does come back to what are the skills that you learn from yoga that you take into your life? Because it's one thing to, be able to go and practice yoga on a yoga mat, but it's another thing to take that and incorporate it into your life and use it in your life. So I'd like to play a clip actually that while you were incarcerated, this is from a short documentary that Yoga Journal did. And I wanted to show a clip, and then we can talk a little bit more about what yoga has meant to you. So I think Blair can pull the clip up.
Well, it just helps me on my everyday life. It's a release, it's a stress relief, it's health, recovery, centering. It's a lot of things.
There we go. All that stuff you've been carrying around, let it go. 4 more.
My approach is, I call it a trauma-informed, mindfulness-based approach to teaching
That's
yoga.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel that one in your legs, huh?
Yeah, that was start that Dallas practice that you incorporated. That was just, yeah, all our legs would be shaking towards the end of that. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you were talking about it's stress release. It was instrumental, in helping with your recovery, centering, and things like that. So I wonder if you might talk a little bit about what it meant to you then while you were incarcerated, and then how that's transitioned with you now that you're out.
Well, first let me say, just seeing that room again, right? Like, so those most people don't know. So you come down through the yard, and there's noise and there's activity and there's, and it's a prison yard. And then you're coming down through there, and then you go through education, and you walk through education, and things start to change a little bit, right? It's a little quieter, maybe a little bit, right? And then we go into that back room, and it just immediately kind of things change, right? The atmosphere changes. You change. You see your people in your Sangha, and you ask about family, and you start to what's going on with everybody, and you start to change, and we get the mats out, and we start the bell rings, and so you start to settle down. We start settling down a little bit, and that's what's happening inside. And inside, and for a lot of us, there was the physical aspect of it, right? That there was an exercise kind of mindset maybe to it a little bit, and because everybody on the yard, oh, that's a good workout in there, but for those of us who know, right, like it's just, we're not in there to work out. We're in there to yes, work our bodies, but find ourselves and center ourselves, and we start to find peace and some serenity, and that's anywhere in the world that's precious, right? Just truly priceless in prison. So yeah, my practice in a lot of ways in prison was there was a lot of physical component to it, which is necessary. I truly believe that. And it's changed now outside, where especially when I was working a real physical job, I didn't need the physical exercise, right? I needed that peace and serenity. And so it changed for me a lot. My practice, like I said, I didn't do it for like a year, with working over a year, maybe. And I called you, and I was like, yeah, I'm trying to incorporate this, and you helped me out a little bit, sent me and got me some links to some videos so I can, and that was great to see, to be able to, sit through a class with you again, right? Was huge. But for me, my practice changed, and I would just get it in the morning, and wake up in the morning, and I've for a long time had the practice. I get up and I hit my knees and I pray, and then I meditate a minute, maybe do a little studying, some scripture, some inspirational stuff, and then try to meditate for a few minutes again. And then when I started incorporating a practice again, and it was sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, 20. On the weekends, it would stretch more and maybe it would get a little more physical to it. But it's mostly been a spiritual practice for me now. And it's interesting how that has changed. And I have to say, though, there's the physical component to yoga was a priority before. And I say that because, so when I practiced with you for, I think it was just over 4 years. And then I stepped away so somebody else could have my spot, because there's a long waiting list. Let's be, for people who don't know, there's a long waiting list for your class in prison. And so my practice started changing a little bit more. But I want to say this about, there was a moment early on, and we were practicing, and we were in the middle of a vinyasa, and it was very physical, but I had really centered myself good before, and I still don't know what it was, but I started crying. I wasn't like physically sobbing, but there was just tears just start flowing, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what that was, but there was some trauma from my life that was being released, and like I say, I don't know what it was, but there was something there, and the body keeps score, the body remembers. And maybe it was something from my childhood that I don't consciously remember. Maybe it was just a lot of just stress and buildup, institutionalized for 30, well, at that time, a good 25 years. It could have been anything, but there was a healing in, in that practice and on that day that took place that I'm grateful for. And I can't articulate it, but there was some healing there. And, I think that it's these little steps that where we start to find healing and recovery. And I think yoga is a beautiful thing for that. So yeah, I'm grateful. And so I do kind of miss a little bit of the physical practice that I used to have. And now that I have more time, I'm going to try to start doing that more. But for the spiritual aspect that I got. So when I started to incorporate my practice on the outside, when I was in the halfway house in the transitional program in San Bernardino, and I was doing it by myself, there was just, so much fear, anxiety, just not knowing where I was going, what I was doing. Like I said, I was an hour from anybody I knew, and didn't really have any real friends where I was at. I could call people, right? But not having anyone face to face, especially after 30 years with having a cellmate, you always had somebody there to talk to, face to face. And so that was really rough. The practice, helped me. There was definitely a help then. But now it's much more spiritual. And like I said, I've had this practice of waking up in the morning, physically, hit my knees most of the time and pray. And then my prayers are mostly just silent. The universe knows what I'm looking for. God knows what I need. He knows where I'm at. So I just try to just be present with my God and do a little reading, a little inspiration, and then maybe a few more minutes more. So it's all spiritual, right? And then now I've started to incorporate the yoga again in the mornings. And like I said, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, but it always starts, kneeling down and just centering, and then slowly moving my body. And it doesn't really matter. I start with my neck and my arms and move my lower back, slide into cat cow, which is something I didn't do a lot after I left your class and I was doing yoga on the yard. Remember, some cat cow I just couldn't bring myself to do on the prison yard. I'm sorry. But I get to do that again now and just really loosen that lower back and start to get the hips loosened up and then, come up into downward dog and start, slowly maybe work into some warrior poses, and then bring myself back down. And, I always have to, to do Sphinx to try to get that lower back stretch back out, and if I can, I get pigeon, loosen up those hips a little more, and then center back down, and then wind up and Shavasana, which is a great one that I couldn't do Shavasana on the prison yard. You can't just lay out on the prison yard in corpse pose, right? The guards in the towers, they get a little upset. So that was one I didn't do for a long time, but now I could do that again. And that's, who doesn't love corpse pose, right? So,
Yeah.
and then come back and just bring myself back. And I'll tell you though that, and I don't know if it's just now that it's more spiritual practice, and I've noticed this in the last month especially, not only am I more attuned to myself and what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, I feel like I'm more attuned to what those around me are feeling and experiencing, and that's been a new kind of feeling, a new kind of experience where I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I can sense where other people are at around me. So,
Yeah, that's interesting because that really short clip of Alexei before you were on, that's what he was talking about. He was talking about how his practice had really made him much more sensitive and in tune with what other people were feeling. And this is all about empathy, right? This is all about developing real strong empathy.
Yeah.
That it's not just about me, it's about other people too, in my relationship with other people, and being able to understand where other people are coming from, their life's experiences, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, are you looking at somebody who's angry, and are you seeing a person who's angry, or are you seeing a person who's hurting? Right. And
Yeah.
I think we're all constantly on a spectrum between apathy and empathy. And, you know, where we're at on that spectrum depends upon a lot of things, but mostly it depends on, you know, how centered we are within our eternal selves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think exactly. I think it comes down to the state of awareness, or you could even say your state of consciousness. How conscious are you? Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just looking at that clip and listening to, you know, what you're saying, definitely the physical part of the practice, I look at it as the main objective is to discharge all that stuff that we're all carrying, not just you guys, you know, but you're talking about, you come to the class, you come from a chaotic environment, you've got concerns on your mind, you've got stresses that you're dealing with, and then you drop into that space and we start moving, and it gives all of us the opportunity to start to discharge, to let go of what it is that we're holding in our bodies. And the other thing that really becomes very clear for me is when we enter into that space, the fact that I'm the so-called teacher, all that disappears, right? And we're in it together.
Yeah.
We're practicing together. I happen to be leading, you know, based on experience and so on and so forth, and maybe some training. But in reality, I'm right in there with all you guys, and we're in it together. And that's, as you mentioned, that's the beauty of Sangha. When you hit that space and you're all discharging and you're all in it together, it really becomes an alternate, kind of an alternate reality for that hour and 15 minutes that we're practicing together. And then you kind of come out of it. And I've always seen it, you know, particularly for recovery, you know, the whole drive to use substances is to alter one's state of reality, right? To a more pleasant state of reality. And I've always thought, well, as it pertains to doing a yoga class, if it really hits that sweet spot for that hour and 15 minutes, and maybe a couple, 3, 4, 5 hours, maybe the rest of the day after that, you're experiencing that state of satisfaction, right? That you seek in other ways. Does that make sense to you? It
absolutely does. Absolutely does. You know, with addiction, you know, you're seeking a mind mood altering, you know, activity, substance, you know, or like behavior, gambling, sex, you know, could be anything, but you're trying to change the way you feel. And that spending an hour and a half, you know, centering yourself, and then twisting and moving your body, and you know, it's having that impact. It's changing your brain chemistry, you know, and you know, the desire to change the way you feel, you know, it's not there because you like how you feel, even if you're not feeling good. If you're walking out of a practice and you know, your strained meniscus is acting up a little bit, but you know what, that your overall body composition is changed into a much more relaxed, pleasant state.
Yeah, you know, since, you know, you've been deeply involved in recovery, and like you were mentioning, I think before we got on, your involvement in Narcotics Anonymous. How do you think how do you think yoga practice impacts cravings? Do you think there's a direct impact there?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, for me, yoga is really a form of meditation, as maybe we think of meditation, and centering myself and know what I'm feeling, what, you know, why it is I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and, you know, for me, I'm an addict. I'm always going to be an addict. That's my obstacle to overcome in this life. I believe that. I'll go walk into a grocery liquor store, a grocery store, and you've got this glass panel wall of a drug, right? It's, you know, there's something in me that says, "Ooh, that will be good," you know, and then, you know, one will turn into 12. That's just this drive that I have, and when I'm feeling good, when I'm feeling, well, let's say when I'm feeling centered, when I'm feeling calm, you know, it's a thought that can just pass through. If I'm not centered, if I'm not calm, or have, you know, that easily to just stop and breathe and get into that calm, you know, that thought can stick. And then once it sticks, and once I attach to that thought, you know, it becomes that driving force. And I get 3 hours after I walk out of a liquor store, I could still be thinking about that big bottle of, you know, doesn't matter what it is, a 40 ouncer or a 12 pack of Burgermeister. It doesn't really matter, right? It's just, it's a thought, and it becomes obsessive thinking. And then, you know, if I was to engage in the behavior, then it would be a compulsive behavior. And that's pretty much what addiction is for me. And yoga and meditation even, it's just being able to calm and center myself. But I think yoga is just an incredible form of meditation that allows to not just find that center, but, as I said earlier, to release some discharge. As you use that word quite a bit in practice. You know, there's this discharge, that energy, because I believe, as you've talked about, it is an energy, whether it's addiction, whether it's childhood abuse. You know, I believe that there's an energy to that lives in our bodies, and you know, we can discharge through yoga or meditation, but yoga's better at it.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, this is interesting, and it's also educational. So you still have these cravings? You still come up against? Yeah.
I'm always going to have those cravings. Yeah.
So take me through the process of, you have the craving, it grabs you. What do you do then? What do you do?
So it usually starts with a thought, but I think that you know, thought, I don't know what's first, the chicken or the egg, right? The thought or the emotion, I don't know, but they play hand in hand together. And for me, you know, I've always got something, you know, I believe in an adversary, of Satan, whatever you want to call it. I believe that there's a negative adversary, and for me, that's thoughts coming in, you know. And I grew up in a loving home, beautiful extended family, a church, and so many people that believed in me, but for some reason, well, I know now, but I didn't believe in myself. I understand that now, but that voice is still there sometimes. You're not good enough. You're not worthy of these good things. And so, I mean, that is an aspect for me. Also, just self-forgiveness is, I mean, obviously, I got a lot to find self-forgiveness for. I got a lot to be forgiven for the crimes that I committed, and just so much of in my early life, and then in prison too. I hurt people, and I gotta find forgiveness. But all these things can kind of just come, and maybe it starts with the emotion, you know, just sadness, self-pity, guilt, shame are huge. And it's, you know, I can be calm and centered, but these things can come. And as we go about our day and we're doing things, it can come. And when that happens, when those emotions come up, right? My early life, I knew what to do. I got high. And so, out here and inside too, and it's, in case anyone's didn't know, there's a lot of drugs and alcohol in prison. So, there's always that voice in my head that says, you can feel better. This will make you feel better. Right. But I can calm myself, and number one, I can play that tape, right? It's not going to make me feel better. One is too many, 1,000 is never enough, is a saying in recovery, and it's true. Once I start, I don't want to stop. But I don't need that now, because I found a peace and serenity within myself. But it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks very much for that. Well, I thought maybe we'd pull up that other video. So you were interviewed. CBS News out of New York came to San Quentin and did an interview of you and Mo. And so I thought we'd play this very, very short clip. And I want people to hear what you had to say, and then I'm going to ask you about it.
I'm not reacting, and I can pause. I live in a pause, so to speak.
He says yoga gave him a new sense of self that will help him start a better life on the outside. Kenneth Craig, CBS News, San Quentin, California.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an expression that I've carried with me. That was a real gift you gave me, Danny. Like, whoa, living in the pause. And so what do you have to say about that?
Well, for me, that pause is I think I've said it in that interview. It's sort of that pause between thought and emotion and action. But you have to feel whatever you're feeling all the time. As an addict, I don't want to feel what I'm feeling all the time, because I can just do something to make me feel okay. But and I don't know if anyone noticed, but when I did the centering for me, when I do my breathing, I try that pause at the inhale and at the exhale, and that's that's where I want to be, right? I want to be in that moment between emotion, between thought and action. If I can be between those moments, and I'm not going to make so many of the stupid mistakes I've made in my life, right? But also just, I'm not going to, well, let me say it this way. It's going to allow me to be more compassionate when I don't want to be, and be more forgiving maybe when I don't want to be. I'm living here with my father, and we bump heads, we can, and I say we bump heads a lot less, because I can live in that pause, because I can just, whether it's inhale and just pause, or exhale and pause, and just know what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, and what's my wisest course of action next. I think that's, for me, what that is. And as you go about your day and you're doing this, doing whatever, we don't pause, we just react. We're acting. We're at work, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And this job I just left, provided me with many opportunities to need to pause and not get angry. And didn't always do that, but I tried to. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of reminds me of one time I was talking about the yamas and the niyamas in a class at H unit. And one of the guys in the class said, well, is that how you live all the time? You always live like that? And I said, you know what? No, I don't. I strive to. And when I realize that I'm not, when I realize that I'm falling short, when I bring awareness and consciousness to the moment and find that I'm falling short, I recommit myself. I rededicate myself to that. So there's no expectation of perfection, right? But there's a commitment to living a life of ethical standards and to living a life of consciousness, which is what you're talking about. I more and more, I feel everything comes down to a level of consciousness. How awake are we in any given moment? And this is actually directly related to the definition of mindfulness: paying close attention on purpose in the present moment. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to pay close attention in the present moment, then things tend to slow down, right? And you're able to see your own reactive behavior, the way you can catch yourself before you go into that knee-jerk reaction. Maybe not all the time, for sure, not for me, not all the time. And then even if I don't, I can see, oh, okay, I didn't, the consciousness is, I see exactly what I did. I see that I wasn't able to basically stay present, and I became reactive, and the outcome was predictable as a result of that.
Yeah.
And the way that I look at yoga is it's a consciousness raising practice. Whether we're moving, whether we're seated in meditation, whether we're breathing. I love the fact that I see exactly now how you relate living in the pause to the introductory practice that you did of bringing in that momentary pause after inhale and momentary pause after exhale, and really bringing full consciousness into that moment of pause. And it's like building a muscle, right? The more you're able to do that, the stronger the pause becomes, the stronger you're able to live in the pause. So I really appreciate that.
I want to mention something. You used the word ethical too. You mentioned that, and there was a book you let me read, Royal or Raja Yoga, so Royal Yoga. Yeah, and there was an analogy, a metaphor in there that if we imagined ourselves as a lake, and the surface of the lake is our mind, and we stay calm. And we don't allow the wind to really just cause whitecaps, and we can stay calm. But the clarity of the water is determined by our ethical living, right? Are we treating others fairly, right? And physical too, right? Am I poisoning my body? That affects the clarity of the water, and it is only when the surface is calm and the water is clear that we can see our true selves, which is underneath that water. Yeah. That was a beautiful metaphor.
Thanks for that. Well, I think we can open things up there, see if folks have questions for you. And I really appreciate it, Danny. I miss you, man. I wish you were down the road. I wish we could get to, we're just going to have to get together more often by Zoom or on the phone.
Yeah.
And I'll copy James's thank you. Thank you so much, Danny, for being here and bringing us through these vulnerable spaces and telling us about your lived experiences. And it's an absolute honor to be here with a fellow yogi, right? Like your brilliance and your study. It really shows. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you. Thank him.
And I know that we don't have a hierarchy, but it really is beautiful to witness the wisdom being passed down, right? And I'm sure that's really cool for James to witness too, the impact of this work. So yeah, thank you both for being here.
It's like a tennis match. We just keep trading it back and forth. So
we have one question here. What was the book that you mentioned? Was it Raja Yoga?
Yeah, that was the name of the book. James has it, I think.
yeah, so it's a very small book, and it's put out by the Vedanta Society. Vedanta, Vendanta. And they have these, it's basically was written by Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, who is, I think I've mentioned this before in a meeting or a webinar, who's credited with bringing yoga to the West. He went to the turn of the 19th century, the late 1800s. He went to a World's Fair or something like that in Chicago, and started the Vedanta Society here in the U.S. And it's a beautiful book. It's a very little book, but it's very traditional in terms of its teaching of Raja Yoga. But if anybody was interested, they could probably write to the Vedanta Society. Their big centers are in New York. They have one in San Francisco. I'm sure there's one in Chicago. They're all over in major metropolitan areas. And you could write and ask for a copy of that book.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm forgetting some of the terms that were involved with that metaphor, but yeah, that was a great one. I've shared it. I need to read that again so I know that I'm sharing it correctly.
Bill, thank you. Bill just dropped. We have it in our bookshop as well, so you can.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great.
which is great. So we just dropped that link in there. And as far as taking questions, we have a couple down here. Some people know the drill. Down at the bottom of your Zoom bar, there's a Q&A box, and you can put your questions and answers in there. And what we'll do is that I'll just say the question and I'll gear it towards Danny or James or both of you. And then we'll engage in a conversation that way. And speaking of books, anonymous attendee says that you mentioned spiritual. This is for you, Danny. Have you read the Gita? If so, this book discusses the war within the mind and how we can contemplate on it and gain understanding of our mind through this battle. What are your thoughts on its relationship to mindfulness-based trauma approaches to yoga? And so I think, whether you read it or not, what I'm kind of hearing from this question is how do the two kind of interrelate, right? Like when you're observing your mind, how does it inform your trauma-informed yoga practice?
I don't know how to answer that really. I don't go into yoga. I don't go into meditation to try to consciously address trauma. So as far as my meditation, my yoga practice, I'm coming in just to find myself, find that eternal self, and just be there for a little while and move and strain whilst remaining, connected to that eternal self. For me, the trauma mindset, it's just those thoughts that come in, right? And I know that they're not, consciously articulate thoughts. A lot of the times it's this all of a sudden, right? Whether there's a thought or emotion, I don't know, but there's just that emotion that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy of things. I think those are, for myself, maybe consequences of experiences as a child or a young man. But that's what just comes, and in some ways, it doesn't really matter like where it comes from, because I got to deal with it in the present, right? So learning to deal with that in the present. I think for myself, whether it's early childhood experiences, good or bad, that I interpreted it in a way that have been negatively impact my life now. or if it's for myself, just forgiveness for the crime that I committed. Uh, uh, self-forgiveness. And I think that those are very similar things, whether it's an experience as a child that I interpreted to mean that I wasn't good enough or I wasn't worthy of good things, that I was somehow less than everyone else. Or it's just, in 1989, I murdered Mr. Duncan Anderson so that I can continue using drugs. And that's just boiled it down. That's what happened in June 10th, 1989. And I say he is always on my heart, right? I mean, he's never far from my heart. Let me say that, and his family and those experiences. And it's just tough. It's just tough. I was recently baptized into my church, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm really starting to find some self-forgiveness. It's been over 30 years. Beat myself up over it, and in a lot of ways, there's trauma there. There's trauma in me, right? And it's easy to just ignore that because of all the trauma that I caused to others. But it all exists, and it's transitory. It kind of comes and goes. I'm working in restorative justice in San Quentin, and just sitting in circle and listening to women who have been raped, experienced sexual abuse from family members, and other men talking about experiencing sexual abuse, the trauma that exists. It's the body keeps score, right? It's there, and it's always going to be there. I don't think we can truly discharge it for good. I mean, maybe some people can. God bless them. Maybe some people don't hold that energy ever. God bless them, but that's not my experience, and I know it's not a lot of others. And you could be doing great one day, one moment, you could be doing great. I can, and just bam, it's like a baseball bat to the head, right? That experience, or that whatever it was, or if it's just a thought, it can kind of come in, it can be debilitating. So we have to learn to experience it, whatever it is, and let it go, and not attach in this moment to that. And I know trauma and experience of prison, experiences in prison where there was violence, whether I was a part of it or not, right? That's going to live with me. I was working at a cement plant, and they had an alarm to signal that the silo was getting filled up when the transport would come in and to bring material in. And this one alarm sounds very much like an alarm at a prison I was in, because they're not all the same. They're all kind of different. But and so a couple times a day, this alarm would go off. And sometimes I wouldn't even notice it, all right? Or I'd notice it and it would be nothing. And then sometimes it would hit, and it would just, take me back. And I'm ready to, fight for my life. I physically, the adrenaline, right? The rush can get the shakes. And, that's what, sexual abuse survivors experience. People who have been abused as children physically, or even adults, domestic abuse. That trauma is, it's real, it's transitory, and for most people, it's never going away completely to never return. So, how are we going to deal with it when it comes up? And yoga is a beautiful thing for that, getting us to a place where we can pause and feel whatever it is that we're experiencing, and not attach to it, and just kind of let it go.
Whoa. Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, what comes up for me around that Danny, is like, I don't know. I mean, in some instances, I think there's a recognition for people who are practicing yoga, or maybe you read something about yoga and you make the connection to your own life's trauma. But I think the way that I look at it from the practice itself is that when you're, and once again, if we get back to the physical part of the practice, and one of the main purposes of the physical part of the practice for trauma-informed yoga is the discharge.
Mhm.
And stress and anxiety are precursors. So if you're experiencing stress and anxiety, they're precursors to stimulating what's underneath that. You're much more prone to experience stress and anxiety if you're sitting on unresolved trauma, right? And so, but when you're actually practicing yoga, the way that I've always looked at it, particularly from the standpoint of the body keeps the score, you don't have to bring to mind the specific trauma that you've experienced in your life. You can bring your awareness into your body and discover where it is that you're holding, as you were talking about energy, where you feel the discomfort, where you feel the fear, as you go, where you're holding your breath. That's one of the key things. If you can keep your awareness on your breathing and you find where you stop and you catch your breath, you hold your breath as you go into a pose or you go into a part of your body. And this is all how the body keeps the score, right? So the way that I look at it, and I also look at it, the body keeps the score. I also look at it from the standpoint of what the Buddhists call the wisdom body.
Mhm.
If the body keeps the score in terms of holding trauma, the body also has the wisdom, if you give it the opportunity, to release it, to discharge it. If you're able to go with it, if you're able to go with the movement and you're able to stay in this state of awareness of what's going on with me, it's like this investigation and this exploration of what's going on with me as I move through the yoga practice.
Mhm.
And I'm paying close attention to the way that I breathe. I'm paying close attention to the way that I feel. It's going to discharge what's held in the body. And it could, and like you said, it may never completely be discharged. But the odds are you're going to be able to develop some skills and some tools to discharge, even if you just focus on the stress and then the anxiety and the discomfort that you're experiencing in your body. That's going to drop into deeper levels of release, of discharge. That's the way that I look at it. And I'm just adding that to what you so eloquently said.
Yeah, I hope I didn't give the impression that like we're, experienced whatever trauma, whatever was some self-inflicted or inflicted upon us, that we're doomed to forever, have these moments of recollection, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I was early on in my practice and we were going and I just started having tears coming down my face, no, that was an incredible moment of healing, and I do believe that, and I believe that through that, I don't experience, those things as much. And I don't. For me, there was an experience as a child that was painful. And I'm sure a lot of children had the same experience, and I won't go into what it was. It wasn't abuse. It was nothing of the sort. But the way I interpreted it was traumatic. And has led to a lifetime of internal dialogue that's incredibly destructive. I've healed a lot from that experience in particular, I believe, because of my practice. And I think it's calm and centering and then twisting and turning the body in ways that allows that energy to be released and to discharge it. But I think you consciously have to be in a place where that can happen. And I think yoga is a good place for that, effective place for that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the science around trauma, and Josephine could chime in here,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of the science around trauma is how the story of the trauma continues to live in our minds.
Mhm.
And I know there's that one quote that there's a certain synthesis that happens in the brain that every time, and it talks about the shortfall of cognitive behavioral therapy as far as trauma is concerned, that every time we retell the story, there's a synthesis that happens that strengthens the story and strengthens our idea and the story of the trauma. Now, believe me, that's not taking away from the seriousness of the trauma, but it's bringing awareness to the fact that the more the trauma lives in our minds and the trauma lives in our bodies, and it's the interpretation of the event and how we carry on that interpretation of the event without involving the physical release that keeps the trauma in the body. And Josephine, if you're hearing me and you want to jump in with some kind of comment, please do.
We don't see her in there just yet.
Oh, okay.
But I actually think we have another question that ties in perfectly with this conversation. And Danny, do you think that you would be where you are without yoga?
No, I would be back in prison.
Mm.
So specifically yoga, I don't know. I really don't know. I know that with everything that she's on, great. With everything all the work that I did inside to get out, that it all helped and it all worked. But there were times when I first got out and was just feeling alone and feeling helpless. And, I easily could have, done something really stupid, maybe I wouldn't have been back to prison, or maybe I wouldn't have been back for long, but, I easily could have wound up doing something pretty stupid in the challenges that I faced in the first months getting out. So yoga, I get emotional because I just, what that would have done to my family and to myself. But, so grateful for everything that I have. And yoga's been a big part of that. Josephine.
Josephine.
Hi, Danny.
Hi.
I'm joining you with COVID symptoms actually from Sweden. I'm very touched. I'm very touched from your story. And I just want to say that I would like to mention that all of this trauma that we're holding and the reactions and everything we do about it is just our body's way of keeping us secure and surviving. So I think that's so important to keep in our minds and our hearts, that there's nothing wrong with us from the beginning. There's something happening with us when we're going through trauma, and the body takes care of that in a very clever way. So no wonder we're reacting the way we're doing. And I think, James, you are spot on the way you're describing it. And it's like networks in the brain, making sure that we're surviving. And that's one of the reactions that we have. So, and I think yoga can help us by strengthening the same networks. So that's what we can experience. But I think it's also on a much higher level. It's also spiritual. And it gives us a connection with our true selves beyond that survival response. So I'm very grateful for you sharing your story, Stan. It's very moving. And I'm so happy to see you on the outside, because I practice with you on the inside. And yeah. I'm in tears here in Sweden, So.
Now we're all in tears.
Yeah. So great. I'll close my camera off because I'm going to lie down on the sofa again. But, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Be well.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Josephine, sending you all of the healing vibes and love over there for a fast recovery.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, this past year, I think, has been an experience for everyone. A lot of people wind up being isolated, and it's can be a not good experience, right? And I think for those people who have been found a way to find center and be individual, be an individual, it's much better to be able to, or to have to go through what we've all gone through in the last year and a half or what. So, we all need connection, right? With one another, with others. We need that connection, but we also need the connection with ourselves. And that, I like the phrase eternal self. I think we're all eternal beings, and we're all connected, and we can find that connection with ourselves. We can be in a much better place to exist. One thing she mentioned too is just like sort of like neural connections, and it's a good point, right? This is how we experienced in our bodies or minds tried to learn from trauma. James used to talk a lot, but frequently talk about how Eastern medicine and how the channels in the body, which is what we're trying to work on in yoga. And Western medicine doesn't understand that stuff yet. But thankfully, we've got another way of thinking about our bodies and how we move and the impacts on that, and just the channels. I know we're running out of time a little bit, but the second brain is something that James has taught us a lot about, and something to be mindful of, and I've appreciated that and think about that, and I try to live much more from that second brain. I think I'm better for it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do a meeting, a webinar, a teaching on that next month. Yeah, and I just did a new Taoist practice, Danny. Yeah, I just did a new one. It's a short one too. It's about 20 minutes, and we should have it up. We should have it done in a couple of weeks. I'll make sure you get a link to it.
I appreciate that.
What's nice about it is you can do it in 15 or 20 minutes, and it's similar. There's some of the moves, some of the sequences in the original Taoist practice are in it, but there's some new stuff in it too. And
okay, I'm definitely going to check that out. Yeah.
And these next few questions, we actually kind of have the same question phrased in a few different ways, but I'm going to take Shonda's question. So Danny, thank you so much for sharing your story. Your authenticity, vulnerability, and transformation is inspiring. I'm so happy for you, and my heart has been deeply touched by seeing you on social media connect with family and friends. I was, and still am, impressed by your composure and wisdom, especially your commitment to your practice and living in integrity. What advice would you offer people who are interested in teaching people who are currently or formerly incarcerated?
First, empathy and faith. One, you've got to be able to just know that you don't know their stories, their experiences. I myself can find myself quickly trying to judge and like label and then I got to not do that. I got to just people are going to be, and I got to let them be, and know that I don't know where they're coming from, what they've been through, but faith that what's that expression? It's 90% showing up, right? Just to be present, and know that things are going to work out how they should work out for everyone's benefit, even if it does not seem that way. And they always say, I get more than I give, and I hope that's true, but may not always seem that way. But you have to have faith that, ultimately I'm getting more than I'm giving, right? But I'm not there to get, but I'm there to give, and faith that my effort. What I'm trying to remember the phrase now. Jacques, big friend of all of ours. I hope Jacques used to, when I first started, Jacques was practicing with us most nights and most Tuesday nights, and he would allow him to close out, and he would say, "May the merit of our effort be given away freely." I think that's the phrase, you know, and you know, if we could all live that way, right? You know, just let me try to do the best I can and be of service the best I can, and you know, however it turns out, you know, it's not mine to attach to, and it's not. I don't know if that makes sense. Is that just
No, that's great. That's beautiful.
empathy and faith, right? That's two things I need to show up with every day.
And Shonda, I don't know if you're in a space to be able to do this. I'd actually like to be, can you put your video on? I'm going to allow you to talk. So yeah, I want you to come say hi to Danny.
It's a love fest, Danny.
Hey, Shonda, she's in the car.
Hi, Danny. I'm in
Hey,
the
there's
car.
the one. Hi.
Eva.
Hi,
So
Eva.
great to see you. So great to see you, Danny.
You too. It's been a little while.
It's been a while. It's been a while, but blessings to you, and I wish you the very best. And I really think you could be a yoga teacher. I'm just gonna just plant that little seed.
I would enjoy, you know, just, you know, as James said, just kind of leading the thing. I'm, you know, the song is going to be the Sangha. I just want to be a part of it.
Right.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. I've been asked to come, you know, go to a house, one of those, not a halfway house, but it's a house actually for college students, for guys who are on parole and on college, you know, getting back into college. I've got to find the time for that. I appreciate the offers, but yeah.
Yeah. We're off to summer camp, so
Oh,
I'm still listening, but great to see you.
you
Thanks for
too.
popping in.
I want to go back
Absolutely.
to summer camp.
Oh, awesome. Thanks,
Yeah,
Shonda.
She taught class for quite a while there for where you were gone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
I-
Sean. Yeah.
I second Shonda's seed planting of you being a yoga facilitator. Yeah, and this opportunity really, right? Where when you were 19, and it seems like these young men that you have an opportunity to work with too was at that transitional age for you as well. That's kind of intuitively what comes up for me. So that sounds like a really beautiful opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've mentioned it a couple times about Sangha, you know, and also mentioning that you had felt lonely when you had first been released. And I know that you know this, but like I'm new to this community, but this is your Sangha just as much on the outside as it is on the inside. So to come to these events, come to practice with us, and every time that you sit, you're practicing with all of us. So this is just as much your Sangha on the outside.
I appreciate that. I was at work, I don't know, it was a while ago, I guess. Shonda was on a Facebook Live, and I got to be able to jump in that a little bit, but I was working, for a couple of years. I was working Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. on the job, and you know, I couldn't leave until the place was you know, cleaned and maintained and ready for the next day. So that was you know, I left that. I decided to go back to college. I start Cal State Fullerton as a junior in August, economics major. So we'll see what happens, but you know, I definitely want to. I'm going to have more time, hopefully. Now, I don't know, a full-time student, I'm going to have to get a part-time job, but I'm hoping to find time to do more of these things. That working 60 hours a week in that physical job, I didn't have time for anything really. So, I said I left the job, and I've been kind of traveling and just seeing people for the last month, and it's just been so incredible. And I'm ready to start school and start getting back to it. But I definitely need to get to a regular yoga class. There's something in the Sangha that's just unique. So I have not been to a class since I've been out. So it's, you know, I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that. I don't know what it's going to be like. Yeah.
And our last question, I think, actually ties in perfectly with this. Doe says, "Hi, Danny and everyone. Thank you for sharing your life's journey. Very meaningful share. My question is for Danny. I'm committed to a weekly yoga practice and meditation a few times a week. Would you recommend to deepen a practitioner's practice to have and show up for a daily practice? I'm striving to be gentle with myself, yet encouraging. So what advice would you give?"
Oh, I feel compassion for self, right? That's been my biggest battle. But you know, honestly, so I think for myself, I think a morning daily meditation practice is vital. It's vital. But yeah, you just you know, you honoring whatever it is you're feeling. So whatever it is that you're feeling when you come into the practice, you got to honor that, right? You got to honor and walk through that. Because that's the only way you really can find your center and have a good practice. You know, whatever it is, right? That's got the hamster wheel going, you know, or the emotions, you know, you have to just bring that and like I said, you know, walk through that, you know, and because if you, I don't know, for myself, I think if I show up and try to say, okay, I'm just going to forget all these anxieties, I'm going to forget everything that the stressors that I have, I'm trying to just push those out of my mind, you know, I really have to sit there and be able to just kind of experience that and just let it wash out before I can have a good practice. And then during the practice, it's going to come back. It comes back, you know. Because I prepared for my first parole hearing, that was, you know, that was a difficult practice. I mean, that just, you know, the anxieties and the fears and everything that would come up for that. It affects the practice, but the practice is what allows me to be able to deal with all that better. So I honor what it is you're showing up. I think that's, you know, but, you know, you got to do it more than just, you know, a couple times a week. Yeah. And like I said earlier, you know, just a few minutes in the morning or in the evening to just, you know, don't have to do 90 minutes of yoga, right? You can do 5-10 minutes. And once you start to learn your body and learn to practice, you know, you'll find what works best for you. And so be patient.
It's beautiful. I hear that you find it just so integral to really set the tone for the day, right? You're connecting with all of yourselves, right? So you're connecting with that internal self, and that's like the priority for the day. And a deep compassion for yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. For me, so you can call it whatever you want, you know. My God, I never was able to really connect and allow my God into my heart and in my life until I came to a place of self-acceptance and meditation and yoga, and a lot of work in Narcotics Anonymous brought me to a place where I could do that. But yeah, so it's not just, you know, centering myself and finding myself, it's connecting myself to my God. And then you can call that universe or Jesus Christ or you know, whatever you want. But connect yourself to that eternal self. And if we were all to come from that place, wouldn't this just be a beautiful world?
And the work that you're doing is helping it make a beautiful world. So thank you. Right? It's like everywhere. That's the biggest difference that we can make is by being our bright centered light. And like you were saying, you're becoming more aware of the feelings of people around you. And it's the same that they can feel you too. So wherever you are is where you bring light with you. And so thank you for being here today and bringing your light and your story and your vulnerability. And thank you, James, for the work that you do and this organization that you started. And really just, I hope that you can see that the lake that you are, right? And the ripples that you make for this community. So that ends our time today. I'm going to drop a couple links and do a couple plugs, but thank you so much, both of you, for being here today for this conversation.